So, my amazing friend Alex is starting this awesome nonprofit called First Love Yourself, or FLY, and she's asking a bunch of people to share their self-love stories. So, here's mine. By the time I first heard about the idea of self-love, I think it was already something I didn't have. It was something I was lacking, something I was supposed to have, something I should have had. There are a lot of shoulds, I guess, involved around that. For a lot of girls, a lack of self-esteem comes from body issues, right? Um, and for sure, some of mine does. I think I was 20 years old before I could look in the mirror and not hate what I see. I've been so conscious about my weight since I was about 10. Always feeling too fat, always weighing myself, and developing this weird, secretive relationship with food because of it. And that's taken me years and years and years to move away from, not all there. I remember, I know in college I tried counting calories, and it set me back so far in terms of a healthy relationship with my body, in terms of being able to love myself. And I started exercising more. I started running. I ran a 5K and then a half marathon, and that was amazing. It's completely incredible, but only once I stopped counting how many calories I burned doing it. The counting just tore me down every day because I just felt like I wasn't good enough if I couldn't keep to this really one simple thing, right? This simple schedule. This many calories a day, this is how much you have. But it's not simple, bodies are so complicated, and I wasn't giving mine the space to be complicated, so I hated it. And then my ability to love my body and my general presentation got so completely shaken up when I came out as bisexual in my freshman year of college. Because I couldn't figure out how I wanted to fit into the queer community. I didn't feel butch and I didn't feel femme, and even as I began to like my body, to wear the kind of makeup that made me happy, to wear clothes I was comfortable in, I still felt like I wasn't being queer right. And I still don't some days. That's definitely not a battle that's over. Okay, until a few weeks ago, my hair was long, and straight, and I hated it. I didn't realize I hated it, but I did. And then I cut it short, and it's the first time that I felt like I might be not just passably pretty or sufficiently aesthetically acceptable, but actually at home in my body. And so much of that is that a haircut like this lets me feel queer. It lets me feel like I can straddle that line of presentation between butch and femme like I've always wanted to, without looking like I'm doing the whole boyfriend shirt thing, which obviously doesn't apply. But my struggles with self-love go so far beyond my body. Some of it, yeah, is about my body, but so much more of it has always been about asking myself constantly, am I a good person? Am I good enough? Do I do enough? Am I helpful enough? Am I kind enough, generous enough, gracious enough? And those questions can be good, right? Like a sort of metacognitive process, but I wasn't using them to reflect. I was using them to scold myself, to beat myself up for not being the best daughter, the best sister, the best friend, the best girlfriend. When I was 5 or 6 years old, I started seeing a counselor. And it's not that I had any real or particular trauma in my life. I've been really lucky like that. I've had a tremendously loving family and a privileged life. But I remember sitting in the bathtub and telling my mother that I hated myself. Yeah, at the age of 5, 6. And it's completely wild to me because I have no memory of why, but I remember that I did. So I saw a counselor until we moved when I was almost 8, and then I didn't see one again until I was 17, but I wasn't doing any better a job of loving myself in between. And I think that was to my detriment, obviously. I don't know, I don't really know how to measure it in years, but I've lived with depression to some degree or another, at least since I was 16, and medium to hardcore anxieties, probably since 18 or 19. I saw that counselor when I was little, and I've been to therapy a couple times since then, for a few months towards the end of my senior year in high school, a couple times in my sophomore year of college, but I never found the right person or put my all into it, so my mental health has just sort of stagnated, and my self-love has definitely suffered for it. It's not just failed to grow, but I think in a lot of places it's like a garden I'm not tending to. I'm not even doing the basics, or I wasn't anyway. I wasn't even watering my plants and pulling up weeds. Um, and I kept asking myself these tremendously cruel questions, but they never really felt like questions. It wasn't, am I good enough? It is, I'm not good enough. It wasn't, am I kind enough? It was, I'm not kind enough. The no, absolutely not answer was implicit. And I beat myself up every time I got angry, every time I wasn't perfectly gracious, every time I stepped out of line or acted like I existed or did something that would get me noticed at all. And it's exhausting. It's always been exhausting to live that way, and it's impossible to love yourself when you're doing that. It's impossible to love yourself when you don't give yourself the space to exist. Um, and I've made a lot of progress recently, partially because I found an affirming faith community where I feel like I'm allowed to be gay and still, explore my faith, which is amazing. Partially because I've started taking gratitude as a practice really, really seriously. And every day, by naming 5 things I'm grateful for, I usually write them down. Partially because I've finally allowed myself within the last year to name my depression and anxiety, to call them what they are. And thanks to all the wonderful people I've connected to with similar struggles, I've learned how to allow myself the space to breathe through them, the space to be depressed and be anxious, and how that doesn't have to mean that I can't learn to love myself. And I'm not finished yet. I don't have this self-love thing on lock. Most days I don't. I look in the mirror and I'm like, it's alright. I pretend that there are no dresses in my closet, because every time I put them on, I end up crying because I feel like I'm shaped wrong, and it's easier to pretend they're not there than to challenge that. I freeze up when I realize that I've been unkind or harsh or imperfect in any way, and then I fall into this cycle of apologies that doesn't stop for hours after I've been forgiven. I stare at myself and I say, I hate you out loud. Like, I'm not finished. But I write poetry, and that helps. I sing in a choir, and that helps. Art has been a really good pathway for me. I get more sleep. I speak my gratitude aloud. I find space to cry and to be scared and to be hurt. And allowing myself that helps. It doesn't, I'm not fighting myself every step of the way, and I'm getting there, I'm getting there.